Hey, good evening, gang. This is Mayor Tom O'Leary, back with Matt Eckelberry. Took a week off last week. There was a death in Matt's family, and we expressed our condolences as a employee group. And he's a really private guy if you don't know him well, so we just made the announcement kind of at the last minute. So, anyways, we're back. Seems like a long time, and there are a number of issues that we've gotten questions about, so we've got a few questions after I get done recognizing a few things. As the COVID crisis and the high unemployment seem to drag on, we haven't, on this podcast, haven't really sufficiently recognized the different groups around town. Largely they're church groups, but there's a lot of feeding, and I wanted to just recognize both the secular groups and the religious groups tonight a little bit. So, in no particular order, but probably based on folks' familiarity, Community Action Commission, which has always had a food pantry, is still operating on a call-in basis. So what they would ask you to do is call in advance. They will put together a food box for you, and then they'll set it outside. You can come in and get it. I think that's how that was set up. That's how it was set up originally. I believe they're continuing with that. I believe they're also planning on doing the weekend backpack thing. That is a real help to lower income kids and over sometimes a long weekend. In addition to that, the St. Paul United Methodist, I go past that place a lot. I know they're doing a food pantry. I think it's on the weekends, but you just see any number of people. So I would want to mention that. The way social media works and websites, you can look at the St. Paul United Methodist site and get all the details about that. But that's what Ash Welsh, cool guy, does a lot of those kinds of things. Usually doesn't, he has a low profile, so I think it's important to recognize those kind of quiet leaders in the community. So St. Paul's, good place. Things are going on well there. First Presbyterian Church, that's what my note says. I wasn't aware of that. They're the folks that do the farmers market, if I'm not mistaken. So they're out there doing that on the church basis. St. Vincent de Paul, out of the St. Joe's Catholic Church, and they're pretty easy to contact off that website. And probably the last thing I want to say about Gallion, helping other Gallionites, that's really cool as it relates to food, is really repeating the spot that we did 2 weeks ago, where Lori Pennington, who's heading up the Gallion food service, has really put together a pretty remarkable, close to 200 people, young kids a day are served through that, and they have lunch stations at East Park, at Heisey Park, kind of cool by the pool if you're going there, the Depot, Libby Lane, and Gallion Arms. So those are stops. I think by this point, if you're getting lunch through that program, you already knew that, but I did want to promote that fact. And I wanted to mention the number of people, nearly 200, is really knocking the doors off that little white bus they drive around, because it's not a little white bus, big white bus, because when the city, the mayor's office took that over after Community Action abruptly discontinued it, gosh, I want to say 6 years ago, we had just a portion of that number of young people, and so really needs to be said, probably needs to be repeated over and over, particularly to people in the community that somehow maybe have a bad attitude and always find a reason to complain about the schools. If there's anything that it touches everyone in the community, it's this feeding program and the outreach that goes with that. So I think all of that's a good thing. I want to jump on to passing out a bouquet, if you will, another attaboy, attagirl, as it relates to Experience Gallion. They are the officially designated Gallion Travel and Tourism, and they have made a donation of their funds back to the city, and they are the co-sponsors of Saturday night's fireworks. So as you decide where you're going to watch the fireworks, we're really excited about the fact that we're going to have them. And I don't want to get on the wear a mask lecture. There's a really good press release that was put out by the Galion Health Department. Talks about the data on recent COVID cases, gets you an idea of what Galion's recent cases, total cases. And the other part of that press release, I believe, came out today, didn't it?
Correct.
It came out today, was just common sense stuff about the fireworks. So read that. I'll say one or two more things. If you're in the park, there'll be some activities there, but I would really encourage folks, if they're in the park, to stay in family groups and social distance. I don't know I doubt if there's anyone from the city that's down there, police officer or anyone from the health department, hassling people or certainly citing people for not having masks on. And I'm not the biggest mask wearer myself, so I'm not being a hypocrite about this. But if you go down to the park, you're in close proximity, you're one of what maybe I don't know how many people, 149 people that may be down there. Probably be a good place to wear a mask because you're going to come in relatively close contact, even if folks spread out. And the other thing I would say is Galionites, which are the most people who listen to this and ask questions about this podcast, you all know the best place to get a milkshake at Dairy Queen or DK's or Michael's or wherever it is, and park yourself and your kids out in one of the parking lots around town. So if you are worried about large crowds, I get it. If you're somebody who is a little bit older, I really get it. So, I guess this might be take grandma out to the fireworks kind of Saturday night, but we're excited to be able to be the sponsor. It's real nice to have a co-sponsor. Having them on the 4th of July, which we scheduled months ago now, not, way before the COVID issues hit. We're real excited about the 4th of July, but we're paying a premium to have them on that night. And it was really cool that Experience Galion stepped up and said, well, we'll take care of half of that. So those are, I think, two important items. Fireworks, you can't understate that. It seems a little bit silly, fireworks, but it's such an important symbol. And people who go out, let's do it in a smart way. Let's be socially responsible, as they say. Wear a mask if you're around a bunch of strangers, and we're looking forward to it. I don't know if you believe the 1 week forecast, but it looks like we got a great week of weather coming up, and so let's keep our fingers crossed. Speaking of great weather, that ought to allow, may have a question already, but that ought to allow the final touches, if you will, on the bike path to be completed this week. A little wet today to do the berming. Very hopeful that that'll happen tomorrow and Wednesday. And then we'll have the seeding of the property and striping. I wouldn't promise it, but I wouldn't be stunned surprised if it was done by the 3rd and ready for the weekend. There's been a lot of people out there already, but those rule following, behaving, following directions types perhaps haven't been out there. So maybe by the weekend that'll be a reality, if not early next week. So those of us who have gone and I feel like the kid that was sneaking in the closet for Christmas presents. So there's been some of us sneaking, but looking at the Christmas present, and it's real gratifying for everyone who's worked on the project to hear the immediate, instant feedback and an idea that we've had for a while trying to get this going here in the office is that you can begin to hear people talk about well, what are you going to do next? Where are you going to expand to the south towards Amons, or are you going to go up towards Pico? So, you've got people seeing this. It really, I believe, will put a lot of citizen momentum and a lot of enthusiasm around building out this initial section. So, one more thing before we go to some questions, and that is the business loan program being administered by the Port Authority. It's done about 18 loans, which is, for those 18 companies, I think that City Council, Port, the Mayor's office all feel like that's going to be money well spent and really assist those 18 businesses in getting back up and running. Kind of wonder why there aren't more, and so I'm just going to make a pitch tonight. Take a look at the guidelines. They're not the same as the feds, and I think this will work for some businesses who maybe didn't initially think they would need some cash flow money or some money in creating the social distancing. Maybe the business hasn't gotten off the ground quite as fast, and so those kinds of business situations are just what the program was designed for. And my expectation is over the next 6 or 8 weeks, some of the federal programs burn off, and there may not be, PPP round 2 or some of the other federal programs that these dollars will really help some of the other businesses keep them up and running. It's almost not life support, but just think of it as another. If you're a scuba diver, I'm not, but it's just another tank of air, oxygen to get you through until things, are back to normal, and like everyone says, whatever that'll become. So, anyways, 3 or 4 things. Food. It's super important. If you don't have it, you don't realize. The SNAP program wasn't designed. It's a supplemental nutrition program. So in hard times, the faith community and the community action and the school system, quite honestly, stepping up to feed a lot of people, and that's cool. And it's cornball, but that's kind of, you realize what a community's like and what the fabric of the community is when you see that kind of, nobody drafted those people to do that. They all realized the need and stepped up, and so that's a cool thing to talk about. Anyways, with that, I know we had a couple letters. This is roadway time. People observing, that's good. They're out driving. But we had a couple questions, and I'm not sure if there's anything more, Matt. So.
Sure, we do have some questions tonight on the live feed. But first, we did want to tap into a letter received by mail. Let's kind of divide it up into 3 topics here. This was submitted by Tom G. State Route 19, coming into Galion, there's a sign that says 35 miles an hour ahead, but no further signage.
Okay, absolutely right, and we'll look at putting a 35 right at the end. I think we're talking about coming east into Galion on Bucyrus Road. So you've got that 35 ahead. When you hit the city limits sign, this goes back to your driver's permit test. What's the speed limit if it's not posted on a state route? It's 35, and then we have some situations in the commercial residential area where that goes down to 25. So we'll go out and stick a 35 out there. The other spot that I took a look at is coming into town on 19, let's say from Candlewood, and same situation. It lets you know to slow down, but the sign that's the signal but doesn't say the speed limit is the corporate boundaries, and on those 2 routes it's 35 till you get into the more residential area. So anyway, that's first part.
Okay, next part, the light at Harding Way West and South Boston Street. Is it a trip light or a timed light?
Yeah, for those people who say just answer the question, don't go on too long, I'll give you the 17-year answer to that question. Actually, I'm joking. The story goes back to 2003 when there was an upgrade of all the lights in Harding Way, and people can think back. It's funny with transportation improvements. Once they're made, it's really it's been interesting to me over the years how quickly you forget what it was like. Route 30, these signals uptown, but each one of those, back to Tom's question, each one of those were mechanically operated and operated independently. So if you think back over the years, as you tried to go from one end of the uptown area to the other, you would be stopped light after light. 2003, there was a major signal improvement project, and the heart of the project is about $1 million spent between ODOT and Galleon Resources. And the heart of it was what's called a progressive signaling, a computerized signaling system, so that as Liberty, where we're at right now, Liberty and Harding Way, turns green, progressively the signals are set up so that you ought not have to stop the rest of the way through. All these signals were what's called warranted, meaning that if you're using federal funds, there has to be enough traffic to justify the signal. All those were warranted. But as I recall Boston, where the question comes from, the middle school used to be there. And so one of the things based on Tom's question is we'll go back. It has been 17 years, so I think one could argue that we've got plenty of use out of that. But the problem that he has pointed out, we've noticed, if you really obsess over that signal, and I'm not saying that he does, but I guess maybe I do, you'll notice that we have our crew out there probably more at that intersection and signal than a lot of them. So it is connected, it's interconnected, and the taxpayers paid a lot for that back in 2003. I think it's a really good issue to run past council and see whether or not there's any discussion in taking that signal down based on the major traffic generator being gone now for heck a number of years. Last thing is we'll check while we're moving down that path to make sure there isn't any clawback with ODOT, that if we deactivate a signal that they use federal funds to fund, there may be some sort of financial implications. So we'll take a look at it, and it's a good question, and I hope that answers it. Didn't take me 17 years to answer it. So what's the other? He's got another one on there, doesn't he?
Yeah, last topic on this letter is, does the city have a policy for dead or damaged trees overhanging the road?
Absolutely worst question he could possibly ask. We have a policy, and it's not a particularly good one. And I think as we get more back to normal at City Hall, I think a good discussion about the city's current ordinance as it relates to dead or dying trees in the Devil's Strip, in the Green Lawn. People have different terms for it. But as it stands now, the responsibility, we've gone over this on this podcast, but also on council before, really is the owner's responsibility. And you'll quickly get a lot of citizens raise their hand and say, well, that's not possibly right. That's your tree. That's not my tree. And so that's really something that council needs to look at. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it goes back to the early 2000s, maybe, when that was last looked at. Maybe even before that, the ordinance. And the last time that was changed, they put the onus on the property owner. But someone around here realized the political non-starter of that, and it's never been enforced. For the longest time, that if you called in and complained, we would tell you, not we, but previous city would tell you, we'll put you on the list. And I don't know. And that list, I never saw it. I guess there was one at one time, but that never got done. And so the question you're raising, Tom's a good one. It's one that is, I don't think it gets solved without some dedication of city funding. But I think if we were to tackle these dead and dying large trees, particularly in the older parts of the city, there's going to have to be some sort of cost sharing with the property owners. I don't have the answer, but I think it's a good question, and we ought to, and the administration and council ought to get to the bottom of that and try to improve it, because we do have a lot of old trees where you have people who aren't physically or financially in a position to take them down when they get that'll cost $2,000 kind of quote. So anyway, those are his 3 questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope we'll kick one into the in basket for consideration on the trees, and the other 2 are I think I outlined probably the best way to proceed.
Okay. And did you want to hit quickly the
sure.
email we received regarding speed limits in residential areas?
Yeah, with speed limits and stop signs.
Correct.
And so there's a neighborhood that's concerned. We had a resident I've known for a really long time sent in an email, actually sent it to Nikki, and looked at it. And I think how we'll proceed is to talk to the council member. The neighborhood actually has 2 council members in the neighborhood, and see if they want to generate a discussion about stop signs. I think the concern is, without stop signs, certain people drive through the neighborhood, probably not even residents, but people going through the neighborhood, and that's the concern of one of the neighbors there. So how we hope to plan to do that is share it with the council members and see if there's some sort of neighborhood convening, see if we can get a consensus around no stop signs, or let's put up stop signs.
Okay, thanks, Mayor. Next, we're going to jump to tonight's
Hey, I want to say one more thing.
questions.
Speed limits, you put a speed limit sign up, it's 25. You should have your license taken from you if you're driving a residential area. You're driving faster than 25. So then that becomes an enforcement issue. So I think the concern is the combination of no stop signs and people with lead foots and lack of enforcement. So I think we aren't going to be able to solve the issue that's identified by just putting up stop signs, but we probably do need to see if the consensus is still to go without signage. So
Okay. First question we had tonight submitted here on the feed is from Jessica. Will there be an Oktoberfest this year?
Yeah, I think Travis postponed it a week, but he still plans on doing it. Correct?
Correct.
So a lot of this hinges on Travis Wolford is the person who's agreed to take over and make a run at it. I think a lot of it hinges on this mass gathering order. And I listened to the governor a while today. I didn't see much give in the rope there. So in terms of lifting that 150 minimum on mass gatherings, they've done I think 300 on weddings, but you can't dance. The father of the bride can't dance with the bride. You know, you can't touch each other, and you can't. You know how it's not just politicians that do this. A lot of people, when they get to a social event, they like to, as they say, work the room. So you're not supposed to work the room. And so that, I doubt if anybody's enforcing that strictly, but that's the key thing, Jessica, on the Oktoberfest. And so kind of, you don't have to pay attention as much as we in government do to what the governor is saying, but keep an ear open. That's probably the best indicators if they take the pressure off the mass gatherings. She didn't ask this, but I'm going to go ahead and answer. How folks who choose to be out in public over the weekend, this is a big message that the governor had today. So it's sort of, what's that called when you signal? I don't want to, it's like not broadcast, but he made it pretty clear that if people around the 4th of July are acting irresponsibly, or if he gets reports that people aren't wearing masks, then I see the kinds of things like that going into the fall, like Oktoberfest, being pushed back, into the future more and more. So, anyways, let's have Oktoberfest and call it a demonstration. There won't be any problems. There won't be any COVID spread. There won't be any problems. We'll even probably get patted on the back.
Thank you, Mayor. Next question tonight comes from Cindy. She asked, is the Sleep Inn Hotel closed?
I heard today indirectly from an employee that it did close. It had been open for a couple of weekends, but I heard that today. I heard that from somebody who had people coming to town and was a little bit stressed. But that's the latest word. And I was asked, I think it was 2 weeks ago, really at the very end of this podcast about foreclosure, and I think that's proceeding. And we're not meeting every day, but we've got our law director working with the out-of-town council that we use to put together the financing, the part of the financing that involved the city and the hotel. And what we expect is that when the hotel is sold, that the money that is owed us will transfer with the deed to the hotel. So we have if you're into banking or real estate, we have a secured interest. It's the same legal interest as the people that have the mortgage. So we'll kind of see how that sorts out. Any more questions about the hotel?
No, but I do have
Okay,
two
well, hold on a
additional
second. And I just want to go ahead and add on something that wasn't added. This is what I expect to happen. I expect in some time this year that there will be a foreclosure sale. Now, will we be out there, everybody standing like a sheriff's sale traditionally? I kind of doubt that, particularly with the COVID and with other things. And so that it will be well advertised. And what I would expect is that there'll be a few bidders, and that the hotel will be sold for significantly less than the mortgage on it now. So that's unfortunate. But as far as long term in the community, I think we need to keep an eye on it. I believe our financial position will be secured, and I wouldn't be totally surprised if as the new ownership is identified, that there'll be. I'd really like to see some portion of that under local ownership. So we'll kind of see how that goes. So we may be out of that. I don't know if the current owner will feel like there's enough money opening up for some of the big weekends. And since it was asked, I spent probably an hour with a gentleman in the area that owns a handful or more of hotels. He owns some hotels in Indiana and Illinois, and so we spent some time talking about the state of that industry, and so I think there'll be a buyer, but there'll be, as they say in the finance, there'll be quite a haircut that the owner and original financer will probably have to undergo. So.
Okay.
There you go. What a great lousy answer. I mean, bad information, but that is what's going on. I do think it'll be back open as the overall hospitality economy rebounds. I think as the Free Center takes shape and is constructed, that'll change the financial picture of the project too, of the hotel project. All right, what else we got?
Okay, next question came from Michael. He asked, is there any chance Taylor Road can be open for more than one weekend a month?
I think if Michael is an individual cleaning up individual properties, I would say, yeah, we'll take a look at that. I don't want to open it up to be an outlet for commercial folks to pile up their stuff and then bring it out there. So that's really the idea, is for citizens' yard debris and yard waste. I hadn't thought about it much beyond that, but I don't know. I'll check the numbers. The way it works internally, if you care, is that there's a sign-up sheet for overtime, and just like any place where there's OT, those people who want to earn a couple extra bucks, they'll sign up for OT, or they'll sign up for the weekend. Usually get overtime, and so first thing is if we did that, if we went to every other week, could we staff it, and then there'd be that incremental cost. Cost doesn't bother me much. in and of itself, it's a good idea.
Okay.
Next.
All right. Also had a question from Ron. I wanted to clarify on Saturday. Will there be things for kids to do during the day on Saturday?
Wear a mask and stay with your brothers and sisters. No, we'll have the park open, the playground. I believe there are some food trucks, and they're a handful of food trucks.
And they open at 4.
Okay, at 4 o'clock there'll be more than a handful, I think. Kind of a handful. There'll be a 14-year-old baseball tournament, and then there'll be so if we can talk about kids, if they like baseball, it'll be a nice quality of youth baseball. And then the cool thing in the dusk or in the early evening is a high school seniors effort that's been kind of put together over the last few weeks by the Galion graders and seniors who missed their last year of high school have been invited back, and we're going to stay within the social distancing protocols that they've laid out for amateur sports, and so there'll be a ball game down there. Again, kids, so the short answer to your question is nothing. I don't think there will be sack races or those bouncy toys, the dunk tank, all those kinds of kid stuff. There will be a car show, we think. They're, kind of darn the torpedoes attitude about that. I'm going to try to social distance that. We'll see how that pans out. But there'll be food and baseball and fireworks. And
the swimming pool.
Yeah, good old American solution to every problem. The swimming pool will be open. So that's about all we got. I didn't know what that dad's name is.
Ron.
Ron. Yeah, I think, it's a good question. It'll be scaled back on purpose. And certainly not a festival by name. You may feel like you're in a mini festival, but we're really trying to work not to try to be cute about the guidelines, but stay within them. We've had, if you take the time to look at that press release, our numbers in the Galion Health District have looked pretty good, and there's no way we want to see a spike a couple weeks out. So the more vulnerable people may not be feeling real well. Like I said, get a milkshake, get something, go sit in the car and enjoy them. They promised it'll be the best fireworks ever. So I don't think that matters what I say, but it's a matter with the young people who are in large part what we do this for, to make them appreciate the 4th of July. So anyways, we out of questions?
We are for right now.
All right. Well, I think I went through all the stuff. There's no point, prolonging this, but really appreciate the viewers. Matt was pointing out to me last week, we're about halfway through the year, and we're really halfway through the year. We're at about total views where we were all of 2019. So, it makes you feel like it's worth the time. I think I really encourage people to participate, call in, and let me see, what can I promise next week? We'll have a council agenda next week, correct? Kind of loaded agenda, should be important. And as far as I can tell, we're going to be Zooming. So while I'm not the greatest fan of that meeting format, one thing that we've noticed is a lot more citizens have been able to tune in to committee meetings, to council meetings, and I think that's a real positive thing. So once we get back together and we're meeting face to face, I'm really hopeful that we'll continue the live stream opportunity. I'm not sure if you'll be able to ask questions like you can here, but for my 2 cents, I think anything that you can do to get questions from people while you're discussing an issue is a positive thing. So a bunch of local sponsors on this weekend, a baseball tournament. So, support them. They've made this possible, and it's really a good thing. So, all right. We're about ready to say happy 4th of July. Be safe. If you're as afraid of fireworks as I am, you'll be watching them and not shooting them off. leave that to the pros, and maybe we'll see you on Saturday. If not, we'll talk with you next time, and hopefully we'll be still giddy about what a great job the fireworks company did to help us celebrate. So see you on the weekend. Happy 4th of July, and good night.